We all had the same T-shirt on. We just had a Pendleton on over
Sure,
the top of it,
sure.
right? And we go.
That's beautiful.
Caused great consternation at that point. That was actually the first dirty T-shirt. There were never any offensive T-shirts prior to that. They were all nice and advertising, and you know. But that was the first of the nasty T-shirts.
Yeah, it's cute.
Anyway, I worked with Ralph until I kind of got sideways with Lou Kimsey, who was under real pressure to try and make the thing profitable. And we were just putting out a magazine. We didn't care whether it made any profit or not. And I got in an argument with him. I said, we're producing the product. It's up to you to sell the advertising. He said, well, I'll get somebody that's more friendly. I said, have at it. I said, I'll go get a job. In the meantime, I had gotten married.
Mm-hmm. So
I had a household. I'd been living with Moravas, and we had, in July 22nd of 1967, was 2 years after I met Patty for the first time. We got married, and we had a drag race wedding. Jeep and Michelle stood for us. The place was full. Perdome, Nye Frank, Jeep and Ronnie, Safford and Gady, Radican, Howard Johansson, Paisano, Bainey, Herbie Reese from Porter and Reese, Stokey, all these drag racers in Moravas' house for the reception. We had a great old time. And I got so drunk I couldn't hardly stand up. And they sent us off. We were going to originally get married in New Orleans, but my dad had a mild heart attack, and my mother figured he couldn't stand the excitement. So she said, get married out there and come here and just have a nice honeymoon. So we had a big old drag race blowout. Peters and his wife were there. I mean, it was a great time. The room was full. The band was great. The noise was good. And Calloway took all the pictures. Jim Kelly was
neat.
there. Ralph was there. A couple of the people from the magazine that were workers that did the putting stuff together. Leffler was there. It was a great time. And I was off to find a new job after having, I think that was about 3 or 4 months after I got married that they put me on the street. Mm. So I went to Peterson, and I had acquired a matchless, a 500cc single motorcycle. Mm-hmm. This was during the days when guys were riding the dirt bikes, and Prudhomme and Moody and all those guys. We were all riding the desert. And I acquired this matchless by trading the guy a set of Bassett headers for his boat that I sandbagged from Bassett, and a bunch of other parts, valve covers and intake manifold, stuff that I was able to get from the manufacturers. I traded him for this motorcycle. So I went to interview at Peterson on the matchless. Mm-hmm. And Bob Green, who was the guy I was going to interview with, was publisher of the book division, and he wrote a matchless Typhoon. Hmm. And when I got the matchless, this didn't even cross my mind, any of this. But it all happened subsequently. And so I rode the matchless up there, not knowing that he had a matchless. So there's some irony there, and the same kind of irony is with Hendrick and that full circle of the magazine business. And I got the job. I was technical editor of the book division, which put out books like Basic Cams, Basic Cams, Valves, and Exhaust, and the story of supercharging. Leffler was doing a lot of blowers then, so I went to him, and we photographed him putting a blower together, and we talked about why it worked and stuff like that. And while I was at Drag Racing Magazine, Ralph had taught me how to do photography. I had the photography in school. I knew how it worked. But I had never applied it to anything. And here, I went out and bought a $3,000 camera in 1965 to get the good pictures, and I got good pictures. And when Bob Green found out about the fact that I did those pictures, he put me in charge of these. This is called
the
Drag Racing
pictorial.
Pictorial.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And all it is pictures of cars.
Yep.
Guess whose pictures there are?
They're all yours?
These are mostly mine.
We waited.
Some I bought,
We waited for those on the newsstand.
and some Ralph took. See, you recognize that?
Yep.
That was opening. That was the first run that car ever made. The
Yep.
Smirnoff car.
Yep.
That's when I was doing Darrell's PR.
That's Vegas, huh?
Yep, that's Vegas. This is Stellings
Stellings
and
and
Tapia.
Beautiful,
Nix, Salisbury,
beautiful stuff.
and if you
Yeah.
go down the thing here, there's some that I picked up from Peterson. Then you see Ralph Goodall, Jim Kelly, and me. And what I did was I paid Ralph extra money for his pictures, and he split it with me
Nice.
because he was out of work too. That magazine thing had kind of collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 months later, I brought him into Peterson. And he took over from me when I moved to Hot Rod Industry News.
Mm-hmm.
So I lasted about a year in, see this picture here, this picture of James Warren?
Yep.
Bob Cashler and I hired a stand, a crane. And he and I would take turns shooting pictures from that crane. That's why that angle is what it is.
Where is that taken?
That's at Lyons.
Okay.
But you see, there's no background, and that's what I wanted. And that's also what he wanted. He was shooting publicity shots for the cars that he represented. And I was shooting for magazine work.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pictures had to be generic. Then I could make up whatever storyline I wanted to and use the same picture because unless it was nighttime, the picture was there.
Right.
So these books were very successful. And the fact that I took them from start to finish, they handed me the project and I handed them the package when I was done. They didn't have to do anything and they sold well. So that made me kind of a minor hero in the book division. The book division included guys like John Christie, what the hell's his name? He's still writing for Hot Rod Books. Doesn't matter, it'll come to me.
Sure.
Tony Murphy was a motorcycle guy, and Gray Baskerville and I hired the same day. We went to work the same day, and he moved through the book division and ended up at Rod and Custom. I moved through the book division, and then Alex hired me at Hot Rod Industry News to edit the trade book. Because I had had retail experience with Jake in New Orleans, and I knew all the manufacturers, and
Mm-hmm.
I was out there doing it.
Yeah.
And so he brought me in to run that magazine. I did that for 3 years, and it was a really comfortable position because Alex is such a nice guy. That the only thing he was really difficult about was expenses. He's tighter than a Siamese Pismo clam. He made Nick Arias look like a philanthropist. Anyway, he let me do what I wanted to do, and I would write about various speed shops, and I'd go to the speed shop and do the article. I did a big thing on Tom Lieb at Scat, who is now a really big deal. He makes crankshafts, and he'll give you a billet flathead crank if you want it.
Wow.
I mean, he really turns out some stuff. And he has a complete collection of Willie's Knights, which is some really fabulous cars that he's shown at Pebble Beach. Really a first-class guy. We raced go-karts together years later. I spent a lot of time at Glendale Speed Center because it was down the street from us when I lived with Mravs, and then when I lived in Burbank after having gotten married. And I got to know Tadlock, and he was the counterman at Glendale Speed Center. And I would go over there and spend a day, just like I worked there, and talk about the experience and write in the magazine what advice I could give to the guy who was running the speed shop in Toledo. My experience with the guys and the customers coming in and out in California. And it was very successful. And in the interim, Bainey had gone from Yakel Plymouth. He got run off. He and Bob Yakel had a key man policy on one another, and Bob Yakel got killed. And he got, I don't know, $350,000, $400,000 out of the policy. And so he bought Bainey Chrysler on Crenshaw and Vernon. And when Marge decided that this lawyer had hooked up with Marge Yakel, Bob's wife, she wanted the dealership back. So she kind of slid Bainey out of the picture with this lawyer doing his job. So Bainey bought Brand Ford from John Bowles. And Brand Ford had been around a long time. My dog Storm, the guy that did the Chick, what was his last name? Anyway, Chick, the guy with the dog named Storm, who used to lay on the hood, that Ralph Williams later imitated, and Cal Worthington also imitated by putting a tiger on the hood stuff. It was a real...
Chick Hearn? No.
Chick Hearn.
No, Chick Hearn was a basketball announcer.
Oh, okay.
I'll think of it. Anyway, Bainey bought Brand Ford and was running the Brand Motors Ford.
Dragster.
And I'd still hang around with him because Bainey was funny. I mean, I really enjoyed his company. And Vince was good. All the people that were involved with Bainey were just first-class people. And Bainey would listen to me. The first time he listened to me was when I talked him into putting a Scott on the Yakel Plymouth car. Mm-hmm. And Garrison had a fit. I ain't running that pile of trash. Well, Bainey says, we're going to give it a try. So Garrison looks at it, and he goes and fixes it. He takes it to the machine shop, and he mills it all, makes everything fit fine, and it wouldn't idle. It's because the butterflies didn't leak air. So Scott told him, just drill a 3/8 hole in the butterfly, and it'll idle fine. And his eyes roll back in his head. What am I doing? So he goes ahead and does what Scott tells him with pressure from Bainey, and I'm behind Bainey like the devil's poking him, talking over his shoulder. And he gets it to idle. Now it's got a torque master in it, so it's really, really difficult to run with the Hillborn that you can manage, or an Enderley that you can manage. But with the Scott, it's really unmanageable. Well, they finally got it sorted out and ran 7 miles an hour faster than they'd ever run before. And Garrison now won't talk to me. Because he can't understand the fuel injector. He knows how the Hillborn works. He's run one all his life. He knows how the Enderley works. It's the same. But he don't understand the Scott. And the car goes down there and goes fast, and the fire getting longer out of the headers. And he don't understand that. I don't really understand it either, but Madden proved it to me, and so I go along with it. So that's the kind of thing I influenced Bainey with. And then when McEwen was driving the Brand Ford, and first with the Chrysler and then with the Ford motor in it, and he was making noise like he was going to go out on his own. Predominantly.